My parents left everything to my golden child brother. 10 years later, they begged me to save them. Growing up, I was always second place to my brother. He was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. Me, I was just there. When our parents wrote their will, they made it crystal clear. Everything, and I mean everything, was going to him. The house, the money, the business. They left me with nothing. Their reasoning? You'll be fine on your own. He needs the support. So I left. I cut them off, built my own life, and didn't look back. Fast forward 10 years, and guess who came knocking on my door? The same parents who abandoned me. And they weren't just visiting. They were begging. Because their golden child? He ruined everything. And now, the son they threw away? I was their last hope. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I always knew my parents favored my brother, Mark. It wasn't even subtle. He got the best gifts, the most praise, and every single excuse in the book when he screwed up. Meanwhile, I had to be perfect just to get a fraction of their attention. I tried not to care, tried to tell myself it didn't matter. But it did. The final straw came when I was 23 years old. My parents called me and Mark into the living room and told us they had finalized their will. I wasn't expecting much, but nothing could have prepared me for what they said next. "We decided it's best if everything goes to Mark," my dad said, like it was the most logical thing in the world. I blinked. "Everything?" My mom nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. The house, the savings, the business. It's all going to your brother." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Why? My mom gave me the most condescending smile. "Because you're strong, you're independent. Mark, he needs this more than you." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. It never came. That's when I realized this wasn't just favoritism. This was abandonment. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "So that's it? You're just cutting me out like I don't exist?" My dad sighed, like he was tired of my attitude. "We're not cutting you out. We just believe this is what's best for the family." Correction, best for Mark. I looked at my brother, expecting him to at least look guilty. But he just sat there, smirking, like he had already won. That was the moment I made my decision. "Fine," I said, my voice cold. "If I'm not part of this family, then don't expect to hear from me again." And I walked out. No more begging for their love. No more competing with Mark. No more being second place. I was done. Walking out of that house was both the hardest and easiest thing I had ever done. Hard, because no matter how badly they treated me, they were still my family. Easy, because I knew, deep down, I was finally free. I packed my bags that night. I wasn't about to sit around, waiting for them to realize what they had done. I moved out the next day. No dramatic goodbyes, no second chances, just silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being held back by their expectations, by the constant comparisons to Mark, the golden child. I was finally doing things for myself. I worked my ass off, built my own career, found success on my own terms. While Mark was coasting through life on my parents' money, I was building something real. At first, they tried to reach out, half-hearted attempts to check in. But I knew what it really was: guilt. I ignored their calls, deleted their texts. If I wasn't good enough for their will, I wasn't good enough for their family. And for 10 years, I didn't look back. Until one day, they came looking for me, and they weren't just checking in. They were desperate. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 10 years. Not a single call, not a single holiday visit. I had completely moved on. So, when I saw their names pop up on my phone one day, I almost laughed. At first I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to call Mark. But then the messages started rolling in. "Mom, please, we need to talk." "Dad, it's important. Call us back." "Mom, we're sorry. Please, just listen." Sorry? For what? They had made it clear I didn't matter to them. They had chosen their son, the one they believed in, the one they trusted with everything. And yet, here they were, suddenly needing me. I ignored the first few messages, but curiosity got the best of me. So I finally responded with one simple question: "Where's Mark?" My mom replied almost instantly, "That's why we need you." Something had gone terribly wrong. I wasn't about to rush to their aid, not after the way they had treated me, but I was curious. What could have possibly happened that made them swallow their pride and come to me? So I agreed to meet them, not at their house, not on their terms. Neutral ground, some small cafe where I could walk away if I wanted to. When I arrived, they were already there, sitting at a corner table. They looked different. Older, obviously, but there was something else. They looked tired, drained, like the weight of the world had finally caught up to them. I sat down, arms crossed. "All right, talk." My mom was the first to break. She actually looked like she might cry. "It's Mark. He lost everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything?" My dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "He made some bad investments. The business went under. He got into debt. A lot of debt." Debt? The business they had trusted him with, the one I wasn't worthy of inheriting, was gone. I couldn't stop myself from smirking. "Wow, that's rough." My mom reached for my hand. "We had to sell the house." Now that got my attention. They had given Mark everything: the house, the money, the company. And now, it was all gone. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to think. "So, let me guess. You need money?" Neither of them spoke, but their silence, that was answer enough. They had left me with nothing. Now they were the ones with nothing, and suddenly I was their only option. Oh, how the tables had turned. I stared at them, waiting. I wanted to hear them say it. I wanted them to admit that after all these years, after choosing Mark over me, they needed me now. My mom finally spoke, her voice shaky. "We just thought, maybe you could help us, just until we get back on our feet." I almost laughed. Back on their feet? They had spent their whole lives walking all over me, and now they wanted me to carry them? I set my coffee down slowly. "Let me get this straight. You cut me out of your lives, gave everything to Mark, told me I'd be fine on my own, and now that he's ruined everything, you suddenly care about me again." My dad looked uncomfortable, like he couldn't decide if he should be ashamed or keep pretending this was just bad luck. "We didn't mean to push you away," he muttered. I scoffed. "You didn't push me away. You made it very clear I wasn't part of this family." My mom wiped at her eyes. "We just thought Mark needed more help. We never imagined—" She hesitated, struggling to say the words. "That he'd fail?" I finished for her. My dad sighed, defeated. "Yes. I should have felt bad for them. I should have felt something. But all I felt was vindicated. They had bet everything on Mark, and they lost. Now they wanted me to clean up their mess. But I wasn't the same person I was 10 years ago, and I sure as hell wasn't their backup plan." I sat back in my chair, watching them fidget under my silence. For the first time in my life, they needed something from me, and they hated it. My parents were always so sure they had made the right decision, that Mark was the only one worthy of their love and investment. And now, they were broke, desperate, and sitting across from the child they had abandoned, hoping for a miracle. I tapped my fingers on the table, pretending to think. "So, let me get this straight. Mark, the golden child, ran the business into the ground, spent all the money, and now, with nothing left, you're coming to me, the son who, and I quote, doesn't need anything from us. That about right?" My mom sniffled, nodding, while my dad just sat there, looking like he'd rather be anywhere but here. It was obvious he still had some pride left, but my mom, she had completely cracked. "We were wrong," she whispered, barely looking at me. "We should have never treated you the way we did." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "No, you shouldn't have." I let that sink in before continuing. "So, tell me, how bad is it? How much do you actually need?" My dad cleared his throat. "Well, it's not just about the money. We have nowhere to go." I almost choked on my coffee. "Wait, let me guess. Mark burned through everything, couldn't pay the debts, and the house got repossessed?" Dad nodded stiffly, jaw tight. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The house that I grew up in, the one they had so proudly given to Mark, was gone. The wealth they had spent their lives hoarding for their favorite child? Gone. Everything they had built, everything they had sacrificed me for, wasted by their perfect son. And now they were homeless and expecting me to bail them out. I should have felt bad. A part of me should have cared, but all I felt was justice. Wow, I said, shaking my head. And here, I thought Mark could do no wrong. My mom's face crumbled. My dad clenched his fists, but he didn't say anything. For once, he had no defense, no excuses, no lectures about how Mark just needed another chance. They both knew the truth now. They had backed the wrong son. The silence stretched between us, thick with tension. I could tell they were waiting, hoping that I'd just sigh, shake my head, and say, "Fine, I'll help you." Because that's what family does, right? That's what they had expected of me for years, to just accept my role as the disposable child, the one who didn't need anything, who was strong enough to handle being cast aside. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had spent the last decade building my own life, without their help, without their approval. And now they wanted me to save them from the consequences of their own choices. I took a slow sip of my coffee, enjoying the power shift before finally speaking. "So, let me get this straight. You want me to take you in, give you money, help clean up the mess Mark made?" My mom nodded quickly, desperate. "Just until we get back on our feet. It wouldn't be forever, sweetheart. Just a little help to get through this." Sweetheart. That was rich. The same woman who told me I'd be fine on my own was now calling me sweetheart like we were some happy family. I turned to my dad, who was still silent, staring at his hands. He hated this. Hated having to admit he had been wrong, hated having to come to me for help. I could tell this was killing his pride. Good. I let the silence linger before finally leaning forward. "All right, I'll make you an offer." Both of them perked up instantly, hope flickering in their eyes. They thought they had won, thought I was about to swoop in and save them, like the dutiful son they had never cared about. I smiled. "I'll help you, but only on my terms." My dad's face hardened. "What do you mean, terms?" I folded my arms. "You don't get to stay with me. You don't get free money. What I will do is pay for an apartment, a small one, nothing fancy, and cover basic expenses for the next 6 months. After that, you're on your own." My mom blinked, clearly not expecting that. "But 6 months isn't enough. We need more time to rebuild." I shook my head. "That's more than enough time to figure things out. I built a whole life from scratch with nothing from you. If I could do it, so can you." My dad's jaw clenched. "We're your parents. You'd really let us struggle like this?" I leaned in, my voice calm but sharp. "You let me struggle alone for 10 years. You watched me walk away and never once reached out. You let Mark have everything, and now that he's ruined it, you suddenly remember I exist? I think 6 months is more than generous." They didn't respond, because they knew I was right. For the first time in their lives, they were in the position I had been in for years, and I wasn't about to make it easy for them. I could see the exact moment my offer sank in. My mother's hopeful expression crumbled, and my dad's face twisted in frustration. This wasn't the answer they were expecting. They thought I'd open my arms, let them move in, give them access to my success like they had once given everything to Mark, but now they had to live with the choices they made. My mom tried again, grasping at straws. "But what about Mark? Maybe if you just gave him some money, he could fix things. He just needs another chance." I almost laughed. Another chance? How many chances has he already had? He blew through your savings, lost the business, and left you homeless. And you're still defending him? I shook my head. "Number. I'm not giving him a dime." Dad finally snapped. "So that's it? You're just going to leave us to fend for ourselves?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "You mean like you left me to fend for myself 10 years ago?" Silence. They had nothing to say. No excuses left, no justification. Just the cold, hard truth. I sighed, giving them one last out. "Look, take the 6 months, use it to get back on your feet. That's more than what you gave me." My mom looked like she wanted to fight it, but she didn't. She just nodded weakly. My dad, on the other hand, he just sat there, fuming. He hated this, hated needing me, hated that the son they threw away was now their only lifeline. I didn't care. For once I was in control, and it felt damn good. I gave them 6 months. That was it. No extensions, no extra help, no special treatment. Just 6 months to figure out their own mess. At first they tried to push back. My mom would call, trying to guilt trip me. You don't understand how hard this is for us." My dad, who never begged for anything in his life, suddenly wanted to have real family discussions. But I didn't cave. For years I had been the disposable child, the one they didn't need, the one they assumed would always be fine on his own. And guess what? They were right. I was fine. I was better than fine. I was successful, happy, and thriving. And they were drowning. Mark, of course, was nowhere to be found. The golden child, the one they had placed all their hopes in, had vanished. The second things got hard. No calls, no check-ins, nothing. He didn't care. But now, suddenly, I was supposed to care. Number. By the time the 6 months were up, they had barely gotten back on their feet. They had a tiny apartment, nothing like the grand house they once owned. My dad was forced to take a regular job, one he hated, but he had no other choice. My mom, once so sure that Mark would always be there for them, was finally facing the truth. When the final month came, she called me one last time. "Are you sure we can't stay longer?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost pleading. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath before answering. "I gave you 6 months. That's all you get. I don't owe you anything more." She let out a slow breath, and for the first time, I heard real regret in her voice. "I know we did wrong by you. I didn't think it would end up like this." I didn't respond right away. What was I supposed to say? "It's okay?" Because it wasn't. Finally, I settled on the truth. "You made your choice, Mom, and I made mine." And with that, I hung up. When I hung up that final call, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no guilt. Just relief. I had spent years wondering if I had made the right choice by walking away. If maybe I had been too harsh. But now, I knew I hadn't. They had chosen Mark. They had bet everything on him, convinced he was their future, their legacy. And when he failed them, when he proved that he was never the golden child they imagined, they came running to me. But I wasn't their safety net. The truth is, I never needed their validation. I had built a life that was mine, a life that wasn't dictated by their favoritism. And watching them realize too late that they had lost me forever was the real justice. After that, I moved on completely. No more messages, no more updates. I stopped wondering how they were doing because, for the first time, it didn't matter. And Mark, last I heard, he was still bouncing from one failed idea to another, burning bridges just like he had burned through our parents' money. The perfect son, the one they sacrificed everything for, had left them with nothing. And me? I had everything I ever needed. Sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do. Not for revenge, not for some petty win, but because you deserve better. I spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy, but in the end, I didn't need to prove anything at all. Have you ever had to cut off toxic family members or watch karma do its job? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more wild Reddit-style stories. See you in the next one.